Welcome to another episode of Pilots Say What, where we get to hear what pilots have to say. And today we'll be speaking with Tim. I'm excited to speak with Tim. We just kind of got to know each other a little bit before this episode, but he's one of our CFIs here at Thrust. And without speaking too much about it, would you mind introducing yourself for our guests?
Yeah. So my name's Tim, and like you said, I'm a CFI here at Thrust. I just finished the program at the end of last year, and then started about a month ago in January. And so
Okay.
been flying and all that stuff. So yeah, happy to get kind of more into it and stuff, and
Yeah.
chat about the experience and Thrust and all that jazz. But yeah, instructing's been a blast so far. So.
Yeah, I didn't realize that when you had started. It's nice talking to new CFIs because that's always a transition period that people seem to be interested in.
Yeah.
I'll ask more questions too about how you kind of got started. But one thing I want to know is just to get some of the basics out of the way. Are you from Texas?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm actually from California.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in California, and then ended up, kind of hopping all over.
Yeah.
Did some traveling for, a handful of years, both in and out of the States. And then, at some point was kind of looking at flight schools, stumbled upon Thrust. We were talking about it. Like this podcast was, one of the major reasons that like sold me on Thrust, just to be able to see the perspective that the students had, on a daily basis and hear what their experience was like. And then same from the instructor perspective as well.
Right.
And after, kind of researching and thinking about it for a while, and was looking at, do some like flying out in California, but kind of the, with my situation and looking at like, okay, what's going to be the best for me. Right.
Right.
Ended up finding Thrust and was like, you know what? I think it's time for a Texas chapter. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
ended up moving out here, and first time on Texas soil was like the week before ZTA day.
Oh wow.
So yeah,
Oh, that's really cool. What's crazy about that is that California seemed to like Texas lately. That's a
yeah,
conversation that's all over the place. But
yeah, and I see those stickers, "Don't California my Texas," and I try not to, and I don't think I have, but
man, we treat you
who
guys
knows?
so wrong. I think I see
No,
those stickers;
no,
they're so funny. But it's a
yeah,
lot of funny stuff. It's like,
totally.
have you seen the memes about if you want to move out to Texas, you should move to our best neighborhood, Oak Cliff, or something like that?
Yeah.
Well, it's like it is actually a lot of nice stuff out there. But the joke is that people like to actually move to like Frisco and things like that.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of Frisco, but
yeah.
Okay, so you're from California.
Yeah.
You did make your way out here to Texas for Thrust. It's great
Yeah.
to hear that you did get to see this podcast and that it was part of the decision making. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Was there something you were doing before Thrust flight, before flight training?
Yeah. So I went to college out in California, and I got a degree in business and a minor in industrial technology. And then from that was able to get into tech. So I was working in tech for about like 5 years.
Okay.
And then from there, I was working remotely at the last couple years for that tech company. And that's where I started to kind of do a little bit of traveling.
Yeah.
And then I kept traveling from there. And then like we were kind of chatting about a little bit with like those breathing and stuff, right? I was actually I kind of really got into health and wellness and stuff. And so I started my own online business where I was doing breath work and meditation classes, both
Right.
group and individually.
Okay.
So then I did that again remotely
Yeah.
for a few years. And then really at that point, still was just kind of like stumbling to find like, what do I really want to do for, the long term?
Right.
And so I kind of always had this idea of being a pilot in the back of my head. My grandpa
Yeah.
was actually a colonel in the Air Force.
Okay.
And so he flew in like 3 wars. And so I grew
Wow.
up hearing all these, really cool aviation stories of his piloting days
Right.
from the wars, from my aunts and uncles and stuff like that. And actually, like a kind of like brief little side story, like one of the
Yeah.
coolest stories from his, his career in the Air Force was he was flying in World War II in North Africa, and he was flying the P-51 Mustangs, and
Okay.
his plane got shot down.
Oh wow.
And he was actually scared of heights, and so he didn't eject himself from the plane. So he crash landed it, and the only injury he had was slicing his finger climbing out of the cockpit.
That's
And
wild.
so pretty wild story. There's
Yeah.
a bunch more like that, So I just kind of grew up with like this kind of almost romanticism around flying just from my stories from my grandpa.
Yeah.
Fast forward a little bit, I guess I was in college, and again I was like studying for business, and there's so many avenues you can go in business: accounting, finance, marketing,
Yeah.
a bunch of different areas. And I was kind of really struggling, like what area do I go in, right? For
Yeah.
even business. And I was kind of a little frustrated. I think I remember like chatting to my parents, like trying to figure out what I was gonna do for what avenue I was gonna go down.
Right.
And I was like, you know what, like screw this, I'm just gonna become a pilot, like Grandpa Stan or whatever and stuff like that. But ended up not doing it because I was still, in college and wanted to
Uh-huh.
kind of finish that off. And then again, kind of just, got put on the back, back burner,
Yeah.
and really didn't think about it until basically, I guess it would have been, yeah, 2024. Yeah, kind of that idea surfaced, and we actually have a good family friend who's a captain at Delta,
Right.
and he was huge for me being able to, kind of bounce questions off him and stuff like
Okay.
that. As far as, hey, how do I go about this? Because it is
Right.
kind of one of those things where I had no idea how you'd go about it. I thought you either
Right.
had to go to like, an Embry Riddle 4-year aviation university, or you had to go to, the Air Force and like enlist or something like that. And
Mhm.
that's how you get, your licenses and your time and your hours. And then that's how you, that, oh, these are all the airline pilots or the, private or charter
Mhm.
pilots and stuff like that. So I chatted to him. Even though he went to Embry Riddle and he did that route, it's just not the case anymore. You can go, 61 or 141, and really the biggest thing is just getting obviously your certificates and then getting the hours. And then
Yeah.
once you have the experience and yeah, you're able to apply for those jobs and stuff. And so that's kind of what I'm gearing for. Is I'd like to go to the airlines. I think that'd be a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
just kind of looking at how that structure of the career and the lifestyle. That's kind of what I'm gearing for. But also I'm open to so many different possibilities, because I think the more that you're kind of getting into something like aviation, like
Yeah.
there's so many different like jobs that I didn't even know that existed,
Right.
and stuff. So I'm still kind of gearing for that airline job. But yeah, I was using him, especially him working at the airlines, right? He works for, is a captain
Mhm.
now at one of the majors, and so I just asked him like, hey, what would you recommend? And he said honestly, like what he's seeing is just go to kind of an accelerated 141 type of school,
Yeah.
and yeah, so I'm using this as like a second career, and so then I started, okay, well, how do I go about it? What school do I go? And I'm sure through most people's research, you kind of find the first handful of schools for 141 or accelerated
Right.
type training, and also plus like this being a second career, I was kind of like once I made the decision I want to do this route, it was like I want to do this route as soon as possible so I can
Yeah.
start actually kind of living my life and working my new career, right? So
Yeah.
so that was kind of the goal with it. But then somehow stumbled. I think I just really enjoy podcasts and
Mhm.
listen to that. And so I ended up looking for podcasts and I think also YouTube videos and stuff like that. And that's where
Right.
I stumbled on Thrust. And then I just got a huge perspective on what it was like as students and instructors and stuff. And I could
Yeah.
really relate with the culture that Thrust was, promoting.
Mhm.
And I can attest to that was, one of the like best things for coming to Thrust, right?
Yeah.
Was you can go in the hangar and there's always groups of people studying, right? There's
Yeah.
always someone to ask a question, and everyone's so friendly and helpful that it's
Yeah.
just like it was a no brainer. At least,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it was kind of, oh, this is what it seems like it is. And I can
Right.
now, being on the other side of it, right? Like having gone through the program and then now instructing at Thrust, it's yeah, that was my direct experience.
Awesome.
So yeah, listen to the podcast and stuff
Yeah.
really helped. I listened to it for like a few months. I did Discovery Flight out in California,
Yeah.
and then was like, you know what? I think it was like October. October was my Discovery Flight, and I was hooked. I was like, that was actually a ton of fun.
Mhm.
And I was like, yep, I'm going to Thrust. And then it was like, all right, what location? At that time I was talking to Nathan,
Yes.
and then basically was like, all right, I'm gonna go through the holidays, January 2025. I'm
Right.
going to Dallas, going to
Yeah.
Madison. Yeah.
Well, we're glad to have you here. It seems
Yeah.
like I think people, you seem to be one of the CFIs that people I think like to have around.
Hey, right
So that's
on.
great. I hope that everyone likes to
Yeah.
have all our CFIs around. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's important to me that what I'm saying on any of these videos, whether it be on the podcast or on other videos, is true. And
Yeah.
so for you to kind of be able to say that some of what we're promoting is what you got to experience, I'm glad that that's the case, because that's important
Yeah.
to me. I don't ever want to come on here and mislead anyone. So if you heard it from Tim, that the students are actually out there studying and that they are
Yeah.
actually welcoming. So I'm glad that that's happening. I hear you talk about how you got the exposure from the stories from your grandpa, and
Yeah.
then you go through college and you're like, I'm not sure if this is really what I'm gonna do. You work in the tech and you kind of get into some of the wellness stuff, but you still think, okay, what I'm gonna do, what am I going to do in the long run?
Yeah.
Um, it sounds like it was on the back burner. Were you ever considering it as a career anytime it was on the back burner? And what kind of, like, in hindsight, what would it have taken for you to have not had it on the back burner and to maybe do this earlier? I know no one's gonna regret, like, oh, I wish I did it earlier, or maybe you
Right.
do feel that way. I guess what I want to know is what would it have taken for you to have started this earlier?
I think the two biggest things that I can think of is just figuring out how to go about it. So like
Uh-huh.
what route do you go? Like how do I actually get this goal accomplished?
Right.
And then the second is yeah, I mean the sad truth is that, even just a handful of years ago, the pay wasn't too great for pilots, or it was maybe a little more difficult as you start out, and then it gets better as you get older and stuff. But basically when I think it was like around COVID, the
Yeah.
salaries really like jumped up quite a bit.
Right.
So then it was kind of like, whoa, like there's no way I'd be able to like kind of chase that and going back into like tech or some of the other, things I was kind of doing. So it was the fact that it now became a salary that I can definitely live off of, right? And then also getting more knowledge and research done around how would I actually go about getting this done.
Right.
And it wasn't until again we had that family friend, and he kind of like steered me in the right direction to be able to really just start researching on my own. Like, hey, what school do I want to go to? Where do I want to fly? Right?
Yeah.
And how do I want to go about it? So I think it was mainly just I didn't know how to go about it, and
Right.
then it seemed like it would be a career that I'd enjoy doing, but I didn't know if I'd be able to support like a family at some point, right? Which is
Right.
one of my goals, is to have kids at some point and stuff. And so if I had some kids, and I needed to provide for them, wasn't really sure based off that, right?
If you're gonna be able to get
Um,
there, yeah, I think
yeah,
about that a lot, especially when you get to a certain age, right? You start thinking, okay, like if I want to have a family and kids, even if I don't have it now, like what is that gonna end up looking like? I need to work towards something like that.
yeah,
And I don't know. For me, that was a big moment when I started thinking, like, what is it really gonna look like in 5 years?
yeah,
And I start, you start strategizing, and things don't always go as you strategize, but at the end of the day, a little insight goes a long way, and it can help you decide what you're gonna do. And I think that's my
right,
goal here. My goal here is to, I think it's our company's goal, but I definitely take that very serious to make sure that people know this is an option, and how to kind of go about it.
yeah.
So I'm glad that you were able to get a little bit of that from a family friend and from looking through the internet. I think, did you watch any other YouTube videos, or did you just in general, maybe not from us, but what did you do to find out more about aviation?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like to. I mean, you just start with kind of a Google search, right? And you
Right.
just start like, all right, let me look at a couple schools and see what they offer, right? How they offer it, and what they're kind of promoting. And then from there, it was kind of just like also learning like about the difference between going like Part 141 versus 61,
Right.
right? And then okay, what are the pros and cons to it, right? There's definitely pros and cons for both. So I feel like it just depends on what your situation was, right?
Yeah.
So for me, that's what I just kind of started out with was, all right, what are my goals and which one kind of fits that the best? And so started there, and then again, like whenever I'm on a drive, I just like to be kind of trying to learn or something, right?
That's what I do. Yeah.
And so yeah, so I was like trying to listen to podcasts, and so there's a few other podcasts. Some were actually like finer points podcast. It's kind of like
Okay.
actually about learning aviation.
Yeah.
And then some other ones are kind of more like lifestyle and
Right.
stuff, right? So it was like stories from old pilots, right? And so that was kind of
Oh, that's
fun to
cool.
like kind of get like a little bit of oh, that's what the lifestyle is like, or some kind of fun adventures and stuff. And then others were like Thrust puts out, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, hey, this is what our school looks like, and direct experiences from students and instructors. And
Yeah.
so I think just kind of through stumbling through just online media and documentation, that I was able to figure out the path that I wanted. And then I started looking at, okay, well, which school, right, is going to have that best fit.
Right.
And then just kind of having that like emotional connection,
Right.
I think with Rust was huge.
That makes
Like
sense.
I was really just like excited, like everyone I remember listening to. I think
Yeah.
it was actually my instrument instructor. I think you had Callan on
Yeah.
here, dude.
Callan.
So he was one of the first like
Super
podcasts I
cool.
listened to, and then he
Yeah.
ended up being one of my instructors.
That's super cool.
So yeah, just like hearing people's experiences, and then again, everyone was promoting the culture at Thrust, and then I can attest to it. It was like, yeah, it was probably one of my favorite experiences going through.
That's super cool.
Yeah,
I've had a couple of our guests talk about how there was maybe an airline captain or another pilot that would maybe even suggest either a 141 school if they're looking to have a career, or they'll suggest like Thrust if they're looking for something maybe in the area, or for whatever reason they
yeah,
may know someone. And so it's cool to know that we're getting recommendations from people who are working in the field that
yeah,
some people are looking to work in. So that's nice. I want to ask you about. I want to zoom out a little bit, and so you get to the point to where you're like, you've decided you really want to go to flight training and you start doing your research. I'm the same way. I'll hyper fixate until I
Yeah.
like really decide what it is that I'm going to actually do.
Yeah.
But that's really the beginning when you start thinking like that, when you start searching and
Yeah.
learning. And then, but then you get to the point to where, okay, like I'm going to do the thing. And so you got to a point where you came to thrust. Um, what was it like? Because most of your insight had come from online and through maybe just stories from your grandpa. It sounds like, right, and
Mhm.
maybe that family friend could have told you some things.
Yeah.
But you get to your first day at Thrust. Are you nervous? How are you feeling?
Yeah, it was a mixed bag, you know? It was
Yeah,
like you're excited, you're also nervous. Yeah, it definitely was kind of a mixed bag of emotions, but really at the same time, it was a little maybe different for me. There was, I feel like a majority of the students, at least in Addison, from what I've seen, are
yeah,
generally from Texas, right?
right.
Actually, what's funny is like I have two students, one from uh, out of the country. I think he's
Uh-huh.
originally from Korea, and then he moved to Texas like kind of recently, and
Right.
another from out of state. So slowly we're kind of bringing in people outside of Texas, right, to
Yeah.
some of these locations, especially now that we're like expanding, you have multiple locations, but. So there's a little bit of that for me personally, where maybe other people won't have that. Is like I was getting used to Texas at the same time.
Okay,
So I
I
was getting
see.
used to Texas, new place, like new home, and then really that first day was pretty welcoming, but also a little like in a weird way, it was overwhelming at first. But then it's
Yeah.
like also that's what you want. And that's why I came here for. When you get there, and then it's kind of like you're up there and you're chatting like, hey, let's have the new guys stand up, and then you have 300 students and instructors like clapping for the new students, and you're like, this is huge. Like
Yeah.
this is a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it
Very
wasn't
cool.
as bad. It's like you start to get really excited once you actually start to kind of learn. And that first day, they throw you, in a ground class, and then maybe even into the simulator, something like that.
Right.
And then that's the other thing too. I had a great uh, private instructor, and so I think everyone who works at Thrust, all the instructors are just amazing, and so they really make you feel welcome, like right off the bat.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe there's a little bit of nerves, but I think it was mainly like excitement
Right.
and kind of just like yeah, you really don't know what to expect, and so you kind of get thrown into the deep end a little bit,
Yeah.
but I think that's good, and that's kind of what you want, right? You want to
Right.
like be able to start working toward these ratings and getting them going and start flying.
Yeah.
And then when you start flying and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm having so much fun. Like I
Yeah.
can't believe this. I mean, even though like when you're a student, you're like in training, right? But then even now it's like I'm looking at this like whole, last year is like this was so much fun. This is most fun I've ever had.
Yeah,
So
that's really
it's
cool.
yeah.
It's I think it's a really I always find it fascinating how people can go from not being a pilot to being a pilot.
Yeah,
I mean, just the stark contrast of what you can do in a year.
right.
It's pretty amazing. You're in flight training. Well, you're past flight training, I guess now.
Mhm.
But you're still learning as a CFI and things like that. But
Mhm.
what I want to ask you about is uh, the difficulty of the thing that you've taken on, right? Learning how to fly and entering the journey of becoming a pilot and maybe getting to not maybe but like getting to wherever you end up wanting to go. Right now you're saying you want to get to the airlines. So far though, you've learned a lot of things. You've gone through a lot of different experiences. Check rides aren't easy. Learning
Mhm.
how to maneuver a plane isn't easy. Learning about weather and systems. Can you tell me a little bit about um, taking all that in and some of
Yeah.
what it takes to learn and be on this journey?
Yeah.
I could ask you something more specific, I guess.
No.
Maybe talk about a difficult time, but yeah.
Something popped up in my head. So again, listen to podcasts, right?
Yeah.
And I was listening to a podcast that had a guy telling an experience about this conversation between a captain and an FO at an airline, and the first officer basically was in a situation where he was just feeling really overwhelmed with all the steps that he had to do, and really he asked the captain, "Hey, what's kind of like my issue? What do you have any advice for me? Like, I feel like I'm kind of fumbling comms, or I'm like, kind of messing up whatever I'm working on."
Uh-huh.
And the captain just said, "You're thinking 10 steps ahead. Like, yes, we have 10 steps that we need to do, in this next phase of flight or something, but." If you're thinking of the next 9 steps, that step that you need to do right now, you're not going to be doing well, right? You're not present doing that thing the best that you can, that first step really, really well. So he just said, the key to there's this phrase always, stay ahead of the plane, right? Don't get behind the plane.
Right.
So if you stay ahead of the plane, all you really need to do is just really focus on that first step. Like, what's the first thing that you can do? Do it really well to the best of your ability, and then from there you move on to step two.
Right.
So really just taking it in small chunks, and I think that was kind of my experience going through thrust. Was really, yeah, you can look down to the last rating of like, oh, there's multi-engine. Like, oh, should I start learning about multi-engine? Like, no, I got to learn how to, read the sectional in private, and so really kind of, you can kind of dream about, hey, I'm going to work for the airlines one day. Hey, I'm going to fly this type of plane, that next rating, but there's something that's on your plate that you could be doing really well right now,
Right.
and to not get too fixated on the future or 9 or 10 steps ahead.
Right.
And I think that definitely relieved a lot of maybe like stress or overwhelm for me personally.
Right.
It was just mainly like, hey, what can I do right now that is the first step in the right direction?
Right.
And so usually it was pretty clear of like, hey, all right, I could be studying for my written. All right, I could be, working on these maneuvers or something. And so that just kind of made it in small, manageable chunks over time.
I might try to have you send that, see if you can find that for me and send it over to me, because I like
okay.
that. I like that story.
Yeah.
What I'll ask you about then is there a time when that was challenged, that thought process, right? Because there's you say it and it sounds good, right? But tell me about a time when maybe you had to kind of remind yourself of that.
Yeah, I guess you're going through the program and you can see kind of maybe people that you started with like going a little faster than you, right?
Yeah.
And that whole comparison thing, I think it's I think it might have been Teddy Roosevelt or something. Comparison's the thief of joy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to, I was, tutoring at the end of my time at Thrust, like in the CFI through multi-engine ratings. And I try and tell, the private and instrument students I was tutoring, like, hey, run your own race, don't worry about the people in your class. It doesn't matter how fast you go. It's like what type of pilot you are at the end of it. Right. But I think that was like kind of tough in the beginning for me was because I didn't really start off like super fast. Right. I was kind of like there was a bunch of guys from my private class that were, like light years ahead of me almost in a way, or it seemed that way. And again, that's just all like mental. And it's like, no, hang on. Like this is a long program, it's going to be, anywhere from, 9-10 months to a year, maybe a little bit longer, depending on like a lot of different situations.
Everyone has their own journey. Yeah.
Could be weather, could be like personal issues, right? One of the instructors that works there, he had like a kid in the middle of his training and he was able to take a little bit of time off, right? But then if he's comparing himself to who he started with, like the other students, right? It's gonna really affect you. So I think that was probably pretty big, was just going like thinking like, oh man, I should be in commercial right now, but I'm still an instrument, and realizing, hang on, no, I'm running my own race, right? And then again, that was something I think I shifted my mind to in the beginning, like kind of like the first couple ratings,
right?
And then everything kind of just became more fun after that, and then kind of more smooth sailing.
It's like a whole new world, it sounds like, anyways. You don't know the language, and I mean, maybe you had a little bit of heads up from at least absorbing it online, but there's a lot to take in. I can imagine.
It's a fire hose, as they say, of information.
As you go through I actually have heard that a lot, the fire hose thing.
Yeah,
I literally think about it all the time when I'm talking to people on the podcast, and they talk about how they felt the overwhelm and having to remind themselves like, hey, put your head down and do the work. So you're going through, I want to talk a little bit more about it though, because you're going through your ratings and, there's lots of fun to be had, but I like to make sure that our audience knows that, because a lot of people are in flight training and a lot of people are going to be in flight training, and it is going to get a little bit difficult. So I want to try to connect, is there anything that you did before Thrust, like maybe the breath work thing, and then maybe even just your college experience? How did any of your experiences in the past kind of inform how to handle your flight training? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even at the end of training, right? Like you're doing a lot of the teaching ratings, so CFI, CFII, and you're getting ready. Most students who are going through the whole program, they're trying to become an instructor, right?
Right.
So a lot of what that entails is kind of that leadership authority, like being able to lead, a group or an individual through some kind of process.
Right.
And so I think I had a lot of experience with that. I had a lot of like random jobs too, just growing up, right? Or through I guess my like working career. So Yeah, I was like a junior lifeguard instructor for a little bit. I ended up teaching, people meditation and breath work. So it's like I had to design my own course and be able to help people and work with people. When I was working in software, I worked with our customers like pretty directly, and I was either helping them like fix issues and training them on the software and getting them like onboarded and things like that.
Right.
So it's a lot of like, I think people skills and learning how to take someone from like 0 to
Mm.
100, finishing whatever project or training that you're trying to get them through. So I think that was pretty huge for me personally, was just having a lot of that experience and
Right.
feeling really comfortable with that. Like I feel like I don't need to be, like the guy in charge or whatever, but I have like those skills just from my previous like work experience, to be able to, like take individual students and people through like, hey, let's get you through this like stage, right? Let's
Yeah.
focus one little thing at a time, and be able to help with that. So I think that was definitely huge. Another one is like, I guess, yeah, I don't know, maybe I have a tendency to like be really good at like memorizing things.
Okay.
I don't like, there's no way to like memorize everything, right?
Right.
But for some reason, I think when you're able to connect something with either like some kind of emotion, it like sticks around a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so I just remember having so much fun going through training. And
Yeah.
so I think just having a lot of fun and really enjoying being in the plane with my instructors, enjoying going to ground class, because, the students in my class and the ground instructor were always so fun to like chat to and ask
Yeah.
questions and really learn from. So I had just a really good positive experience that I think was able to really kind of embed the information into my mind. And so,
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I can kind of probably think of some other things, but I think those are probably the biggest things that helped me, was just maybe my experience and maybe just my approach to and I think that's what also helped with Rust, is I
Yes.
learned really well with people.
Mm.
So studying with people. So like, you go into the hangar and there's a few extra,
Yeah.
students sitting at a table, and you go, hey, what are you guys studying? Like, oh, we're studying commercial. And it's like, oh, well, I'm studying private. Like, you might ask me a couple questions, or, oh, I'm studying commercial. Can I join in
Right.
and start studying? And you're like talking through things to get a deeper understanding. Maybe you're kind of quizzing each other, right? Like kind of doing like mock stage checks or mock, EOC or check rides and stuff like
Right.
that. And then really being able to, yeah, just work with people and
Yeah.
and learn from each other, right? And then on the flip side of that too, when you're actually studying with your friends, right,
Right.
or even tutoring, the more that you're able to like teach, the more you're able to like kind of understand that material anyway. And again, it just kind of goes into a deeper level of like understanding and knowledge and stuff.
Yeah, and they say you don't know something until you're able to teach it sometimes, right? And then
Right.
when you're able to
Right.
teach it, you kind of really know it.
Yep.
On our on one of our, I think it was our most previous podcast, our guest name was Ashley,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, she did a great job. But she talked a lot about, we got into a little bit about how people skills really take you far, and sometimes it seems like that's a lot of what it means to be a pilot. It turns out,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of different ways to be a pilot, but a lot of pilots tend to have that skill that I'm a people person, I'm a hands-on person, I'm a worry about the next step person, and it's very in the moment and present kind of thing,
Yeah.
and it seems like all that kind of goes together. I want to go one layer more there, and you talk about having fun and that being kind of important to your journey and being able
Mhm.
to memorize and kind of take in the information. It's kind of weird. People don't always connect those sorts of things. Like learning is about, like, if you have fun, you can learn better. People would think like, no, it's not about fun. You got to learn, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like a weird mix there. The question I have for you though, how are you managing to make sure that you're having fun in the middle of all these difficult things you're doing? Because a lot of people think that that's a juxtaposition, that fun is something that you should sacrifice when you're stressed so that you could focus. But really, you're saying that's not the case. You need to make sure that you're having fun so that you're more likely to succeed, at least in your case. So my
Totally.
question is how do you draw that distinction? How do you kind of make that clear that you're having fun so that you can succeed, and that that's related at all?
Right. Yeah. And again, this is like just from my perspective and my, direct experience through, my training and stuff like that. But I think just having the work experience that I had
Uh,
was able to provide a perspective and an attitude I was able to bring into my daily training and then now my daily work, where I'm just grateful to be here,
yeah.
So I think like seeing um,
Mm,
some people around the school who might be, really stressed out about a check ride or stressed out about a stage check. I have friends who know people who they, they're working at the airlines, right?
Yeah.
They're working for, a charter or private operation, something like that. And they've had check ride failures. And so it's not the end of the world, but like when you kind of get so stressed about like, oh, what if I fail this check ride? What if
Yeah.
I fail this stage check? And you're just kind of, it takes away from being out of the moment and being able to really be present and really perform your best, to where if you kind of, release that where, hey, we don't necessarily need to be so stressed out about that, right? Like it's not the end of the world. Like if you, fail a stage check or a
Right.
check ride or something, like you can still make it. You can still, achieve your dream. And so coming into, whether it was training or now work, but coming into school every day just kind of going like I know where I could be, right?
Yeah.
I could be sitting, somewhere doing a job that I just am not happy with and really just not excited to do. And
Yeah.
so being able to hop in the plane and learn more about aviation and teach aviation is so much fun. And so having that perspective and just that sense of gratitude, like hey, like not everyone gets to be able to experience this, which is the unfortunate truth, right? Everyone has different life situations,
Right.
and this industry as a whole, especially this profession, and then especially in training, as well as when we are working for whatever it is, airlines or private or whatever, uh, involves sacrifice.
Yeah.
A lot of time, effort, money, and it's not an easy decision for sure. But when I wake up every day, just going, oh yeah, I'm excited to go do what I'm about to go do. I'm excited to go
Right.
fly with my student. I'm excited to go, teach some ground class or
Yeah.
whatever it is. It's yeah, just that perspective of, hey man, I'm very grateful to be here.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
And I heard you say something about how yes you might be stressed, but when you think about the stress you could have by working a job you don't like, it's a you
yeah.
take it every day, right?
Yeah,
um,
and there's always stress, and that's it's easy to say, it's not to say like, oh, I was never stressed during training. Of course,
right.
I was like stressed before every check ride or something,
Yeah.
right? But when I just try to think back, like, hey, what was I doing before? Oh yeah, I like did not like waking up and going, oh no, I got to go do this thing that I don't want to do, and then now I get to wake up and go, all right, it might be a stressful day, I got a check ride today, but I still get to go fly. Like
Yeah.
it's such a different perspective, and I think if more people had that perspective, maybe it could even be, applied to outside aviation as well. But just, yeah, like that, their walls will kind of come down, right? So
Yeah.
they won't be as stressed, and they'll be able to perform better and things like that. But yeah, I mean, there's so many stories of people and even especially at Thrust where it's like they were working something, some job that they didn't like, and they're like, you know what, my dream is to go fly. I want to go fly, and then they make that step, that leap of faith, and they go for it, and they end up having a good time. But then again, you can kind of lose yourself in the moment of having too much on your plate or feeling overwhelmed or
Yeah.
something. But so it wasn't like a perfect journey
Right.
the whole way through, but it certainly was, I think, one of my strengths of just, hey, you know what, I could be somewhere else doing something that I don't like, and I'm just really grateful to be here and keep pursuing my dream.
It's funny how far that can take you. That's great. You're about a month, maybe 6 weeks into CFI,
Yeah,
being a CFI.
yeah, yeah.
Um, we've gotten to know you quite a bit about how you maneuvered to get to this point. And there's a lot of other questions I could think already to ask you, but just to keep it moving, I
Yeah.
want to know a little bit more about what it's been like adapting to becoming a CFI. I mean, you've talked about it a little bit, but when you first, uh, enter the CFI position,
Hmm.
what's it sort of like? What could someone maybe expect, and how did you adapt?
Yeah. So I can only, again, speak from what I went through, and well, I know Thrust, like they set you up for success for sure.
Yeah.
They're definitely here for you the whole time. Like we go through, a few days of like in doc class where you're basically kind of learning the ins and outs of the ratings that you're about to teach, and how to work with students, how Thrust specifically operates, because you kind of learn from a wide perspective. Because if you're going through the program, we're trying to teach you so that way you could go be your own CFI, do contract work or go work at a 61
Right.
school or work here at Thrust. So we're preparing you for really anything. But um, but yeah, I think they set you up for success, and I think another piece of it too is you're obviously there for a reason. Like you got the job, right, or you've gotten the training, right. You're
Right.
you're now a CFI, you're CFII. You are qualified for it, right? So I think there's a little bit of that imposter syndrome off the bat. Is kind of like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I
Like, am
can,
I
yeah,
really supposed to be
and
teaching a pilot right
yeah,
now?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But then and so like I think that first maybe lesson or meeting, with like one of my first students was like a little like, oh man, like I wonder if I'm cut out for this. And then like 15 minutes in, it's like you're just flowing, and it's like, or at least
Yeah.
at least it felt like that for me, where it was just all right, let's have some fun, let's go learn
Yeah.
how to fly instrument or something like that, right? And so yeah, I think just kind of like trusting that like you've gotten the training, right? And you
Yeah.
obviously got the certs and the ratings that allow you to teach, right? And then also kind of, they start you off slow, so you're not like a full schedule. You don't have like
Right.
4 or 5 students right off the bat, right? So you kind of start off like, all right, let me like get a handle of this, right? And there's also a bunch of questions like left and right that are going to pop in your head because it's all so new, right?
Absolutely.
Now instead of like you're learning how to fly a maneuver or get through this stage check or something like that, you're now teaching the student, and now you're learning how to log lessons, and you're learning how to like work with dispatch to get stuff scheduled, and
Yeah.
how all works. So now it's kind of like a bunch of new things that you're learning and having to adapt to. But again, everyone in a black shirt, it's like, hey, can I see a quick question? And they're always like willing to help and
Okay,
stuff.
sweet.
And then they usually like will set you up with like an assistant chief that you can report to, and go and ask for help, and then also like a buddy with like someone who's like more senior, kind of more on their way out.
Right.
And so utilizing your resources again, at least from Thrust, how we do things here is we're setting you up for success, right? You have all the resources and to really do well. So I think they do that well where they don't overwhelm you right off the bat. So you can kind
Right.
of get your footing. You can kind of like, run into those weird situations. Like, I'm not sure what I would do in this situation. And then you can like kind of work through it with maybe like one of the more senior guys and stuff like that. But at the same time, yeah, like it's at least for me, having a little bit of that imposter syndrome in the beginning, but then it
Yeah.
quickly like went away, where it was like, wait, hang on, like I know what I'm doing, and then this is
Yeah.
so much fun. Yeah.
And
But I'm
and
obviously still learning too.
you're right.
So
Yeah,
like,
you're
yeah, yeah,
still,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you're always, that's
But
always part of the goal. I think that I've had people who are like much more senior in their CFI position. I mean, I've had aviation. I'm sorry, airline pilots on the
yeah,
pod, and but the tone is still that I'm always learning. That's the thing
yeah,
about aviation. It is like an endless amount of learning, and
yeah,
so that's like always gonna probably feel that way. So having imposter syndrome is something that we're hoping is manageable all the time,
yeah.
because you have to kind of revel in the fact that you've gotten as far as you have.
Right, right.
I've if someone's gotten this far in the podcast, if I was watching this podcast or listening to it, um, I think something that would be going through my mind is you hear a lot of like positive statements out of you, and
Oh yeah,
you hear like that you've been able to get the most out of what we have to offer at Thrust, at least. And a lot of people are on their own journeys. Um, I guess one thing that I would want to ask you if I was listening, and I am,
yeah, yeah.
uh, it, there's obviously no perfect organization, right? And I know you wouldn't necessarily claim Thrust is perfect. Maybe you would. I don't know. But I'm a skeptic naturally, and so I would ask you, how do you manage to get, uh, you know, what you feel like is like the best out of our organization, when there's probably people who don't manage to get the best out of our organization? What do you think the difference is in how? And I don't want to put you in a tough situation, but there's people who don't get the best out of any situation they're in. What does that kind of look like? Do you
Yeah.
mind like, I don't know, hypothesizing on that
Yeah,
or
I got
theorizing on
I
that?
got an idea for you.
Yeah.
I think at least with Thrust, the best way to succeed, and again, it's like kind of fitting, what school or what type of program will fit you, your personality, like your goals and things like that. I think with Thrust, if you are a people person, like you like studying with people and learning from people and like being at the school, I think where I see some students maybe not have as great of an experience
Right.
at Thrust, where maybe they would actually have a better experience somewhere else, is maybe they're more like solo individual learners, right? Like, hey, I just kind of want to like study at home and do my own thing. And
Right.
that's what I think is actually kind of crazy to just for my personality and my the way that I learn. Thrust was just fit it perfectly where
Okay.
I was able to learn with people. We were in classes. I was able to like study with people.
Uh-huh.
I had a buddy who actually just got a job at SkyWest, and he did 61 back in California,
Right.
and he was getting ready for like a check ride, and he had one ground with his instructor before his check ride, and so the
Wow.
rest of his ground knowledge was like all on him doing like an online ground school or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think of that going, that's wild. I would
Could
not fit
never.
in that type of style of learning. And
Right.
so I think I see people that even at Thrust, where and you know again, it's everyone's situation's different, but they might
Absolutely.
live like 45 minutes away or something, and so they got to commute. So if they don't have like a ground or a flight going on that day, they may not come into school, and so
Uh-huh.
there might be some time where like, oh yeah, I haven't seen that person in a while, right? Because they're just not kind of like active at the school. But I like personally, I had the opportunity to kind of pick where I ended up, and I'm just right down the road,
Yeah.
from the school. So I kind of tried to make it a point to try and come to Thrust as much as possible
Yeah.
to be able to just be around people, absorb information, be part of little like study groups,
Yeah.
and I think that really benefited me. So I think it kind of depends on maybe your personality, how the program's structured. I think a little bit of that like accountability with the stage checks, right? And the
Right.
ground classes, like pretty much when you start out on any rating, you're in a ground class and you have a flight 5 days a week,
Right.
right? And they may not be the same 5 days, so you might actually be doing something at like 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So it just kind of depends. So it is full on, right?
Yeah, it really is.
But I loved that because I figured if there was too much break time, right, you might forget the last lesson or have to like review it, right? So you're able to kind of build maybe quicker on the knowledge and the skills and
Uh-huh.
things like that. In addition to that, you're kind of being held more accountable with kind of the structure of the program, right? It's kind
Right.
of less. It seems like at least from the different styles of the programs and ways you can go about it, it seems it's very hands off and kind of more on your own terms, and so that's where people might take longer to get their rating. But then also if you're just a go-getter, right, which
Yeah.
I wasn't, I mean I'm kind of a go-getter, but not necessarily in that aspect where I don't think I would have been able to get through as quick as I did if I had to do it all on my own.
Right.
And so I think for me, it fit my personality and it fit with my goals. With all right, what do I want to do? How do I want to go about it? And maybe there's some people who just maybe aren't at maybe they're like personable. It's like kind of like you can be like an introvert but still like have people skills and stuff, right?
Exactly.
Not really sure exactly like on all that, but yeah, if you just don't really like enjoy like kind of being around people or learning
Yeah.
in this style, that might not fit your goals and your personality.
Yeah.
But for me, it really did.
Yeah, that makes sense. It seems like you once you decided you were going to be somewhere, you were going to get the most out of it, anyways.
Hmm.
And I don't think I don't think you're going to let something stop you. I guess at the end of the day, and I think that's what it seems like. A lot of the people I talk to have in common. They're not going to let something stop them once they've decided to do it. Plus, this is a really big decision. You
Yeah.
you already paid for school,
Yeah.
then you're gonna have to pay for this schooling as well, and that's a difficult step in of itself, especially for pretty much almost anyone, I guess. And so once you kind of commit, you're kind of like you're in there. Wow,
Yeah.
you can't let anyone stop you. So
Yeah.
uh, well, I've talked to you pretty much about your whole journey so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many more other questions I could ask, but I wouldn't want it to run too long here, and maybe we'll
Yeah.
have to have you back on again.
I'd love to
Uh,
come back. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, because
Yeah.
I still would like to ask you more about your breath work online thing that you did.
Yeah.
That's so interesting to me, and then also kind of some of your goals. You want to get to the airlines, but there's always a little bit more to explore there. And I mean, I also would like to learn more about how your CFI journey goes on. So I'm sure we'll have you back on. But for now, I think we're at a good point, and I would like to let our audience know that if you made it to this point, then that means you enjoyed something about this podcast. And I've seen on our back end that a smaller percentage of our people who are actually watching regularly have actually subscribed. So if you've seen a couple episodes or if you've watched this whole episode, it'd really help us out if you subscribe. You can always unsubscribe later, but it helps more people find us, and it helps us get back in front of you in case we have more things for you to learn about when it comes to aviation. Our goal here is to help more people have insight, just like we were able to do for you, Tim. I'm glad that we were able to do that, and hopefully now you
Definitely.
can give back in this sort of way. Thank you guys for tuning in on this episode of Pilots Say What, where we get to hear what pilots have to say, and we'll see you next week.